Hey, it's Alyssa, the chef for Roth living in Salt Lake City, and today I'm going to be showing you how to bake a beautiful bundt cake in your Wolf convection steam oven using the convection humid mode and the probe thermometer. So, before we get to how to bake it in your steam oven, let's make the batter. So, first things first, we have our dry ingredients, and it's simple bundt cake recipe with flour, baking powder, baking soda, and some salt. And what's going to elevate this cake and make it something different is we are adding Earl Grey tea. So this is a loose leaf Earl Grey tea, and I'm gonna be adding 4 tablespoons, which is the same as 1/4 cup. So we've added our loose leaf Earl Grey. It smells so good. It's kind of got essences of lavender and citrus. It's beautiful. And I'm just using a whisk to combine all these dry ingredients. And then we've got our wet ingredients, which is just a cup of buttermilk, okay? And then what we're gonna do to create this batter is get our creamed butter and sugar and eggs from our stand mixer. One of the keys to a beautifully cooked cake is making sure that you cream your butter and your sugar really, really well. I mean, a lot of people think, okay, great, it's combined, I've got them together. No, I mean, let this thing run for 5 minutes. You want it to be light and fluffy and pale before you add your eggs so that everything is completely combined to the point that the sugar is almost completely dissolved into the butter, okay? So that's what we've got here. Our butter, our sugar, our eggs, and vanilla extract. And now we are going to add the wet and dry ingredients in batches. So first we're gonna add about 1/3 of the flour mixture. And we're gonna start with this, combine it just until the flour is all completely integrated into the batter. And then we are going to add our buttermilk, and then we're gonna switch back to the flour and then back to buttermilk and finish with flour. This just really helps everything to incorporate more evenly, which is really key when you're baking a cake. You do not want to have pockets of flour in your dough or your batter when you go to bake it, okay? That's going to be an unpleasant part of the cake, and we want the entire cake to be beautifully cooked and completely enjoyable. So I'm just using a spatula. I like to use a rubber spatula here because it helps me to combine really evenly without over mixing. Another key to a really beautiful, delicious cake is not over mixing your batter. Once you start adding flour to something and mixing it up, flour mixed with some sort of liquid, it's going to create gluten. And gluten is great when you're baking bread, but not so great when you're making a cake because gluten is a protein structure and it's gonna make your cake tough if you develop too much gluten. So the key here is trying to mix as little as possible, but fully incorporate your flour. And that's why I really like to use a rubber spatula here and just gently combine everything, okay? So here, I'm being careful to fold the mixture together, combining everything without splashing this up onto my face, because trust me, that has happened before. And now we're going to add our last bit of flour into the mix. And again, we've got a pretty good batter now. It's gonna end up being a pretty thick batter, which is really what you want when you're making a bundt cake, which is kind of a version, this is a version of a pound cake in a bundt pan, okay? So you want it to be nice and thick, and that's why it's gonna be so important to bake this as evenly and beautifully as possible. Okay, so there we go. The batter looks gorgeous. It's all fully incorporated. Make sure you get all the way down to the bottom because flour likes to hide down there. And we want to make sure all of it is completely combined. All right, get a little arm workout while you're at it. And this dough looks fabulous. Then we've got our bundt pan. It's all ready to go. I have already greased it. And then another of my little tricks when it comes to baking a cake, especially one in a bundt pan, or any sort of cake tin that you want the cake to come out of, after I butter it, or go ahead and use that spray in a can, no one's gonna judge you and it's gonna taste the same. Once you've done that, I actually like to take some sugar, sprinkle it all over the inside, and then dump it out so that every edge of the cake pan is covered in sugar. Not only is that, I mean, delicious, it's gonna caramelize in the oven. You're gonna get this gorgeous caramelized sugar edge to your cake. I mean, hello. But also, it's gonna help the cake come right out of the pan. And that's what you really want when you've got a bundt, because the whole point is you've got these beautiful fluted edges. So, as you saw, I scraped all of the batter from that bowl. Anything left in there will probably be eaten by me, it's fine. But here, I wanna just make sure we are not wasting any batter. And here you can see, I'm actually just gonna go around now and smooth it out so that it's all perfectly, evenly around the cake pan. Give it a couple of taps. It's just gonna help everything to settle and to make sure that we don't have any air bubbles. And this batter is ready to go in our steam oven. So, first things first, we're actually going to, in this situation, you would want to preheat your oven, but I'm gonna show you guys exactly how to get to the correct mode, okay? So there, cake is in, I've got it on rack position 2. That's kind of the middle of the oven, so I like it there the most. From there, you're going to hit any button to turn your steam oven on, quick start, and then you're on the home screen. You wanna go over until you find the convection humid mode. Hit enter. You'll see another screen that says use rack position 2 or 1 and 3 with a little check mark. You're gonna hit enter again. From there, it comes up at the main screen where you can start. It comes up at 330 degrees internal temperature. That's where we want to leave it. Typically, you would bake this cake on 350 degrees in a regular oven. In your steam oven, 330 degrees is ideal. Now what's happening on this convection humid mode is it's not going to add any sort of moisture to your cavity. It is rather just going to close off the vent that is in the top of the oven, and that way use any moisture that's found in the cake, in that batter, to circulate and keep a very humid or moist environment, which is going to help bake your cake evenly and keep it very moist, because nobody likes a dry cake. As you saw, the oven has just started, so now it is going to preheat, which will go very, very quickly. And from there, it's going to start baking. Now this cake in a regular oven, I would recommend, is gonna take about 45 to 55 minutes. It's a thick batter and it's a bundt cake, which means it's deep. In my steam oven, if you're thinking 45 to 50, I would set the timer here for around 35 minutes. Now, the reason we're setting it so much less is because at that point, I'm going to now teach you my other trick on how to get the perfectly baked cake. In 35 minutes, your cake still isn't gonna be all the way done. However, it's gonna be close and it's gonna be set. That's where you're going to come in and use the probe thermometer. This comes with your Wolf convection steam oven, and it has so many wonderful uses beyond just making the best roast chicken. Here, you're going to actually wait till the batter has been set. I don't want to leave this in a wet batter this is just going to sink to the bottom. So once you have baked most of the way, like I said, we're going about 35 minutes here, you're going to come to the oven. That's already preheated, just in case you're wondering. And you are going to insert this probe directly in, carefully, because the oven's hot, right into the side of the oven, and put this into your cake. Carefully into the middle, and try not to let it hit too many edges, but then you'll come back to your steam oven and you will use the arrows to find the icon that looks like a little graph and a degree Fahrenheit. You'll hit enter there, and you want to set the internal probe temperature to 205 degrees. That is going to give you the most beautifully perfect baked cake ever. If you're making a chocolate cake, set it a little lower, more like 200 degrees. But that is how you can use your probe and your convection steam oven to get the most beautiful, delicious cake that everyone is going to want to eat. So when you come back, you guys will get to see how it ended up looking, and I'll show you the beautiful glaze that we finished this with. Okay, so our beautiful Earl Grey Bundt cake is finished baking, and you guys can see how gorgeous that looks. Perfectly cooked and golden brown, and the entire cake was at that 205 degrees, which is going to give us a delicious, moist end result. No dry cakes here. So to finish off this cake, we're letting it kind of cool off a bit. We're gonna flip it out onto our cake stand. And in the meantime, I'm gonna show you how we make a very subtle yet delicious and simple glaze. This is a lavender lemon glaze. So what I've done, I have here some lavender infused milk, and I wanted to show you guys how I did it. So I like to use a shallow pan, and I get a couple tablespoons of milk with a couple teaspoons of lavender buds. I warm this up until it's just simmering, and then I let it steep, turn it off, let it steep for at least 30 minutes to really allow that lavender flavor to infuse into the milk. And then you strain it out and you end up with this gorgeous, fragrant, aromatic lavender milk. And that's gonna be the base of our glaze. All I do from there, we're going to start adding powdered sugar, basically until it is the consistency that you want. You may prefer a thicker glaze or a thinner glaze. That is up to you, but you will probably need more powdered sugar than you would think, okay? But you guys can see how all of that powdered sugar is just being absorbed by that small amount of milk. It's nice and thick. Now I'm going to add a pinch of salt because it's very sweet. Gotta add a little salt to kind of taper that sweetness. And then I'm going to add a couple drops of lemon juice just to end up with the exact consistency that I'm looking for. So here I'm gonna just whisk it all up together. It's gorgeous. I'm gonna go a little bit thinner. You guys can see that's nice and runny though. So I want a little more lemon juice, just a couple drops. And that I know is going to be the perfect consistency to drizzle our cake. Look at that. All right, so glaze is done, and now we're going to turn our cake out. And if you'll remember, I sugared all the sides of the cake as well as greased it, so that this should pop right out. Little trick, take your cake pan or whatever you're serving it on, plop it and flip. This is always the scary part, and pray. Yes, and here we have our beautiful Bundt cake. All right, so now, final touch, take your glaze and just give it your good old-fashioned drizzle all the way around. Again, as much or as little glaze as you like. It's nice, it adds an extra nice touch because a lot of times Earl Grey has lavender flavors and essence to it, so this kind of just highlights that and brings it all together. And here is our final product, our Earl Grey cake baked in the Convection steam oven on Convection Humid with a lavender lemon glaze.